Okay, so beta so your equity beta, the beta we just had there, is a measure of the total risk. Now we can break that risk, total risk, into two parts.
Okay.
What we call business risk and financial risk. So if we look at the risk of a business, okay, we can break that down into two parts, business risk and financial risk. So these are terms we will come across. So with the business risk, and the terms are used interchangeably, asset beta or unlevered beta. So the asset beta or the unlevered beta just measures the business risk of a business. And as we said here, the equity beta, sometimes also called the levered beta. So you will see the terms interchangeably. Okay, so the equity beta or the levered beta measures the total risk, which is business plus financial risk. Okay, so the asset beta, also sometimes called the unlevered beta, only captures the business risk, whereas the equity beta or the levered beta captures both the business and financial risk. Okay, so what do we mean by that? So you have, so I live in Jolly Harbor, so you have two condos. The two condos are identical. There ain't no difference. As your people say, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If you were in one or the other, the amenities are all the same, the view is the same, the furnishings, everything is the same. If you live in one or the other, you wouldn't notice. And that does sound like some of us in Jolly Harbor, they all look the same. But now, so if you are investing in these apartments and you are renting them, business risk just captures what we call the underlying business fundamentals. What determines your return on this investment? It might depend on the number of tourist arrivals, whether the economy is doing well or not, whether Trump does something with the visas, whether the Canadian dollar is strong or weak. So everybody is affected by that. So you have one condo, she has the other. However, you have a mortgage on your condo. She doesn't. This is where now the financial risk comes in. So if you invest in a condo, there's a risk just by the nature of the rental business. You know, you might get a tenant. You know, they hire this principal from St. Vincent and he has a lot of crazy friends and they have wild parties at the house and the place get damaged. You know, these are risks. These are risks of being in the rental business. That's what we mean by business risk. But if one person pays for, if one person's condo, if you think of the capital structure, then this really is coming from different capital structures. So one of the condo is 100% equity. The person doesn't have a mortgage. They're rich enough to buy the condo. The other condo, however, the person will borrow half the money. So we would think that both of them face the same business risk. However, the person who has debt, they have a higher level of risk, comes what we call financial risk. Why is that? Whether the condos get rent or not, that person has to pay the mortgage. So that there's an additional level of risk comes from using that. So the equity beta, the beta that we use in here, captures the total risk, business risk plus financial risk. Whereas the asset beta or the unlevered beta just captures the business risk. Now the reason why we kind of belabor that, depending on how information is given, you might have one beta and you need to move to the other. So in terms of applying the CAPM, the beta you need is the levered beta or the equity beta that measures both business and financial risk. So please note that, okay? The beta here in CAPM is your levered beta, the beta that captures business plus financial. But sometimes you only have the unlevered, and then you need to move the levered. So you need to know this formula, that the equity beta is equal to your asset beta or unlevered beta divided by E on V. So your equity beta or levered beta is equal to your asset or unlevered beta divided by E on V, same E on V from up here. So we're going to take a short break, and I'm going to do it from the spreadsheet, but from the kit, and just go through some mechanics. So this is really exhibits 7A and B from the case study that we are using. And we're going to be working out the Wacc for the Lao Care project in Pakistan. Okay, so let's take a short break and come back and do some numbers.
I guess you finish. You finish? Project?
Finish one.
You finish one, you finish that one.
Ashanti, you done? You finished? Yeah.
Almost done.
Be with good, you said it.
See?
Almost.
Me also not see my brother.
Cash. Okay.
Nice. You done the ratios and everything?
The ratio is easier.
Easy, yeah, okay. I'll do that last time. Or maybe I should do it first and
You
get it
should
out of
do
the
it,
way.
yeah, exactly.
Get it out of the way and get my marks and then move on to the next one. That makes sense. Huh? Ratios? Okay, she said take more time. Okay.
Done the horizontal analysis and stuff. I say get you that way.
Please get something.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's what he said.
But you'll finish the structure.
What?
You'll finish structure.
Yeah.
You got how you did the comparing the stocks. Had any issues with that? Because you went in not do as soon as I don't know.
So you finished all the questions?
Finish everything except that one. 'Cause it's not long.
That was the last one, right? What was the last one?
The last one is the trade. I finished all of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just when we have to compare the two different stocks.
You need to remember that one. You remember that one?
What?
To compare two different stocks.
Can't remember it.
It's not allowing me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only one I haven't done.
7 days from now.
Yeah, get all hundreds. You're done now.
I want to make sure. I said.
Alright, who are we missing? Where is she? She's missing in action. Someone, that's what she's holding up the class. Okay, so the company here is AES. It's an American company. And they invest in electricity, they build power companies around the world. So what they're trying to work out here is what is the weighted average cost of capital for these different projects. So if they are deciding to invest in a project, what would they use as the discount rate? Now, the lab care project we do first, because you actually have the numbers for the lab care in the end. So again, what I always encourage people is keep it simple as possible. No matter how complicated the facts, you are trying to pull out from the data 5 things. You want the target capital structure. So percentage of debt financing they're using and the percentage of equity financing. You want to find the cost of debt. You want to find the information cost of equity and a tax rate. Now Normally, to get a cost of debt and anything, you want a risk-free rate. You usually need to find some kind of default spread. Oh, you're back, you were holding up the flag. Default spread. And you're gonna want some kind of equity beta. Depending on how it is, an asset beta might be involved. And you need a RM, a return on the market, so that you can get an equity or market risk. So no matter how complicated the data, they must tell you these things. There must be somewhere in there for you to flesh that out. So let's just walk through this. So for the Lalpier project, what do they tell us? So debt to capital is 35.1%. So that is telling you that for this particular project, they want to borrow 35.1% of the money needed to build this power plant. Okay, so your D on B is 35.1. Therefore, what does that mean by definition? That the E on B has to be 64.9. Okay? And again, if you put that in dollar terms, what does that mean? If the power plant costs $100 million to operate, they are going to go and try. They're saying we want to go to the bank or bond market and we want to borrow 35.1 million, and we are going to go to our shareholders to try to raise the remainder. So that's how they plan to finance the power plant. Pick the easy ones, the tax rate. What's the tax rate in Pakistan? 23%. So we know this. So what do we have? We have the target capital structure. Right? So that's how they would like to finance the project. 35.1% debt, 64.9% equity. It's going to be operating in Pakistan, so it's going to face a 23% tax rate. So when they go to borrow that money, what interest rate would they likely have to pay on that 35 million? That's really what the RD, or cost of debt. When AES, or if they were to go to borrow that money, what are lenders likely to charge them? Risk-free rate. So Exhibit 7B. So the rate on a 10-year US government bond is 4.5%. For the people who they're going to look to lend them the money, these investors have a choice. They don't have to lend to you. They're trying to maximize their own welfare. And they can put their money on government bonds and earn 7.5%. So the 10-year government bond rate is typically used as the proxy for a risk-free rate. Now, AES is not the US government. They can't borrow as much as they want, they can't tax. So there's some risk. How much extra? And I think we are told here. So the default spread is given as 3.57. So lenders want 3.5% spread on top of the government. So that is suggesting to you that persons are going to be willing, if when they go to borrow the money, they can expect to pay about an 8% interest rate on their loans. Investors want 3.5%, 3.57 on top of what? Given their assessment of the risk of this project in Pakistan, they're demanding a premium of 3.57. Also, Exhibit 7B, again, it depends on, it tells you that the US risk premium is 7%. Okay, 7B, the US risk premium is 7%. So RM minus RF in the equation is 7%. So you're not given RM, you are given the spread. The equity risk premium or the market risk premium is 7%. Which implies that the return on the market is 11.5. Because RM minus RF, if RM minus RF is 7%, and we know that RF is 4.5, then it implies that RM is 11.5. And what do we know? So, about the betas now, that's the other one. So you're given some unlevered betas, so you're given asset betas. So this is betas that only measure business risk. Doesn't include financial risk. Okay, so unlevered betas and not levered, because what you need for the CAPM is the levered beta. That includes both business and financial risk. So we have some betas here. What type of project is the lab bear project? So it's a contract generation project, which really means that they have a contract. Okay, so it's a bit different than what we're used to in the Caribbean, where you have power companies that both produce and distribute energy. In many markets, there are different businesses. There are people who generate electricity and other people who distribute. So they have, so AES is an energy producer. And in this case, they have contract generation where somebody is agreed to buy the power from them. So they have a guaranteed buy for whatever power. And that type of project has a beta of asset beta of 0.25. So the asset beta for that type of project is 0.25. So therefore, following our formula, the equity beta, the beta that you really need, is your unlevered divided by E on V. So you're working on the unlevered, and you divide it by E on V. It's a little bit. Why is the unlevered, sorry, why is the levered beta? Why is the levered higher, bigger? Why must it be bigger than the unlevered? Why must it be, or why would it be higher?
It's a combination of the financial and the business, and unlevered is just business.
Right, so the unlevered is just business risk. When you move to the levered, you have business plus financial. So if you had no debt, everybody clear on that? Everybody's clear as to why the levered is higher than the unlevered? Because the unlevered only measures business risk. Whereas the levered is business risk plus financial risk. So the business risk is just the risk of renting the condos. When you take on some debt to acquire the condo, you introduce an additional element of risk we call financial. So the levered monthly. What if you had no debt? If you had zero debt for the project, what would that mean? It means that the project has no financial risk. Does that make sense? If you finance it with 100% equity, you have no debt, then the project has no financial risk. And what do you see happen to the two betas? They will be the same because there is no financial risk. But you have some debt. You have 35% debt. So the risk is a little higher. So what is the WACC? So sometimes I just like to do this. What's your after tax? Okay. What's your after tax cost of debt? So it's your cost of debt multiplied by 1 minus the tax rate. Your after-tax cost of debt is your cost of debt, RD multiplied by 1 minus the tax rate. And why does that matter? Why does that come in? What is the underlying issue there? So for a business, not necessarily for an individual, but for a business, there's an advantage to using debt financing over equity. Why is that? Why is there but not necessarily for an individual, but for a business, why is there an advantage or one benefit of debt over equity? It comes from taxation. In arriving at your taxable profit, so the government, and I think we did a little bit of this here, right? So the corporation tax rate is 25% in Antigua, right? The government is taxing 25% of what? 25% of your earnings before taxes, right? Your EBIT minus interest. So if you don't have any debt financing at all, so what are the implications for your taxes as a business? If you don't use any debt at all, in our example here, what would be the implication for your tax bill to the government? Right, so if you didn't have any debt, right? Then interest payments would be what?
0.
Right, so how much are you paying in taxes now? 25,000 in that scenario, right? Because it's 25% of 100,000, right? If you had no debt, what would your interest payments be? 0? So your profit before taxes would be 500,000. And what would your tax bill now be? 125,000. Okay, because interest is really a tax deductible expense. When you so if you need to raise 100 million in capital, and you raise some proportion of it by debt, one of the benefits of that to you as a business is that it can reduce your tax bill. But compare that to using equity. Where do dividends come out? When do you deduct the dividends? After the taxman has gotten his money. So the dividends don't help you to reduce your tax bill. Okay, so from a corporate viewpoint, there is actually a strong benefit to using debt finance. People call it a tax shield. Okay, debt financing and the interest payments shield a proportion of your income from the tax man. So we capture that in the Wacc calculation by doing so. Again, if you look at the formula for Wacc, what do you have here? You have cost of debt multiplied by 1 minus the tax rate. So what that calculation is capturing is the benefit you get on debt financing by touching cable here. So what is the interest rate on the debt? What is your cost of debt that we worked on? 8.0%, right? But because interest is a tax deductible expense, your effective interest rate is 6.21 because you're getting that tax saving. Okay, you're getting. So debt financing is a free lunch for a business. Already the government gives you back part of the interest. You're really allowed to deduct that interest for tax purposes, so it gives you an effective saving there. And it didn't work out the cost of. So the cost of equity would be from CAPM, risk-free rate, plus your equity beta times the equity risk rate. So the cost of equity is 7.194. Now it's a little bit beyond the scope of our course, but that should make you, let me not complicate that. That number should jump out at you as a little author. Maybe I should explore that. Let me do the Wacc calculation and explore that. So what's your Wacc? It's so following the formula. E on V times cost of equity. So E on V times your cost of equity plus D on V times your cost of debt times 1 minus the tax rate. I've already done this a little bit at the back. So it's plus D on V times your after-tax cost of debt. So your Wacc is 6.85%. And that's what you would use to do your NPV calculation. So if you were trying to determine whether to make this investment, this would be your discount rate. This is what you would compare the IRR to. Okay, so let me pick another project. So I want to pick the Caracoles project in Argentina. Now, there are some things that are going to remain. Okay, so let's go through. How does this company plan to finance the Caracoles project in Argentina? They plan to use 40.8% debt. Okay, and again, that number is just coming straight from the case study, 40.8 Caracoles. If you're going to use 40.8% debt, what does that imply? That you're going to use 59.2% equity. Okay? Everybody with me? We do the easy ones. Please pick up your marks. What is the tax rate in Argentina? 35%. Now the risk-free rate isn't gonna change, huh? What is the risk-free rate? It's the rate on US government 10-year bonds. So we pick that up from here. The rate on a 10-year government bond, 4.5%. What is the default spread for the Argentina project? So when investors look at the numbers on that project, how much more do they want above the government? Then that's given, and they want the same 3.57, I think. So they're asking for the same 3.57. So we can now estimate the cost of debt. Just going to be the same 4.5 plus 3.57. And we can do it after tax, which is the cost of debt multiplied by 1 minus the tax rate. What do we notice here? So again, these are some useful things to notice. Which project has the lower, if you notice, both projects have the same interest rate. You seeing that? Can't see on the camera. Both projects have the same interest rate, right? 8.07. But when you take into account the tax savings, which one has the lower after tax? The Caracolas. Why? The tax rate is higher, so the tax benefits of debt financing are greater. The taxman is grabbing more from you. So the debt financing that you use the interest payments to shield give you something a lot better. Now the Caracolas project is a CS project, so we call a competitive supply, as distinct from a contract generation. What do you interpret from that? A competitive supply versus a contract generation. It's riskier because now you are producing energy, but you don't have a guaranteed buyer. There are no distributors of electricity who have signed a contract with you to take what you produce. So the Lalpere project was a contract generation, CG project. You had a guaranteed buyer for electricity. Here now you have to produce and go and. So what is the business risk or the asset beta for competitive supply? It's 0.5. And this is probably a very good example of what we mean by business risk. Why is the business risk of the Caracolas project greater than the business risk of the Lalpere project? Right. So really, Lalpere only has production risk, if you think about it. Because the Lalpere is a CG project, or a contract generation, whereby, so it's like if you have a bakery and a supermarket or a restaurant, they have signed a contract with you that as much bread and cakes as you produce, they're going to buy it from you. So that's an example of a contract generation. Whereas with the competitive supply, you are a bakery, you're making your stuff and you're putting it out to sell and trying to get. So we see that the asset beta or the business risk for Caracolas is much higher because they don't have a guaranteed buyer. So if you're a bakery and you have a signed 1-year contract with the hotels and others to buy your bread and cakes, then your only risk is production risk, whether you burn the bread or you don't make it properly or you can't sell it and so on. Whereas Caracolas, they have both production and market risk. Now the return, the equity risk premium is still at 7%. These things have nothing to do with the specific project. So RM is still implied at 11.5, that has nothing to do with that. But now the levered beta, following our formula, is the unlevered divided by E on V. So the unlevered 0.5 divided by E on V is 0.8. So the Caracolas project, according to the beta, is more than twice as risky. Why is the so if you look at the Caracolas beta, and again for me this is a lot more important than the mechanics, that you understand, you can explain why. Why is the beta of Caracolas so much higher than the beta of Lalpere? You look like you have the answer. Don't keep it. Come on, not sharing with us then. Why is the beta of Caracolas project so much higher than the Lalpere? It has higher business risk, we just said, right? It has more business risk because it don't have a guaranteed contract. It's a competitive supply, right? And what else? If we come up here, what else? Right, it has more debt than Lalpere. Therefore, it has more financial risk. Okay, so it is riskier on both ends. It has a higher asset beta, which says that the underlying business is riskier. And that's because it doesn't have a guaranteed contract. And it also has more debt. So which business is riskier? Digicel, so business risk, which will have higher business risk? Digicel or APUA? Business risk, which will have higher business risk? Digicel will have higher business risk than APUA. Everybody agree on that? You know, as hard as it sounds, you can live without a cell phone. Or you don't have to get it from Digicel. But you kind of need the electricity. You know, you kind of need the water. So it would have lower business risk because the demand for the product is less elastic and so on. So the cost of equity for Caracolas, risk-free rate plus the beta times the risk premium. Okay, so again, the cost of equity is higher. Cost of equity is higher because of the bigger beta. And what is our WACC? Percentage following the equation, don't believe me, I might lie to you. Percentage of equity times cost of equity. So it's E on V times cost of equity plus D on V times cost of debt adjusted for taxes. So D on V times after tax. So the WACC is higher. It's a riskier investment. As an investor, you are demanding, you want a higher rate of return because of the risk. Now, if you want to de-risk the project, how might you get it? How might you de-risk the project? Maybe reduce the debt. If you reduce the debt percentage, what are you doing? How are you de-risking the project? Because you're reducing the financial risk, right? So you can try to get off some of the financial risk. Can you do anything on the business risk? It might be hard, but if you can find a contract, find some way. we have the CS project in the United Kingdom. Which one is this? We have one in the UK, the Drax project in the UK. Then how do they plan to finance the Drax project? They want 29.5% debt. Which therefore implies that they want 70.5% equity. Corporation tax rate in the UK for this type of project is 0. Risk-free rate remains the same. The equity risk premium isn't going to change. So yes. Okay, what's the default spread? How much extra? We seem to have the same 3.5%. Therefore, we can estimate the cost of debt as the same, 8.0. And what's the after tax? Minus the tax rate. So it's going to be the same. There's no corporation tax, so there's no benefit of that. What type of project it is? It's a competitive supply project. It's typical of the UK market. So this is their beta, unlevered beta. So for a competitive supply project, the asset beta is 0.5. Therefore, the equity beta following our equation is the unlevered or the asset beta divided by E on V. So it's the 0.5 divided by the E on V. So let's look at Caracolas compared to Drax. Why is Drax's levered beta smaller than Caracolas? Okay, and that's just much more important to me that you can appreciate those things more than any number crunching. I have, my man here is holding his head. I have no interest in your ability to do arithmetic.
Okay.
You were saying? Less debt. So they have the same business risk because their asset beta is the same, but Drax has less debt, so it has less financial risk. So the business risk plus financial risk number is smaller. So what's the cost of equity? The risk-free rate plus the beta times the risk premium. And again, what's the logic there? As a shareholder in the Drax project, you face less risk than the Caracolas project. Why? Because there are fewer debt investors to be paid ahead of you. So what is the weighted average cost of capital? E on V times the cost of equity plus D on V times the cost of debt adjusted for taxes. 9.05. Why is the Drax project so much riskier though? Our biggest Wacc. What is driving that? Why is it so much riskier than Caracolas? It actually has a smaller cost of equity. Why is it riskier? no tax saving. You see, the cost of debt ends up being a lot higher because they're not benefiting from any tax saving. Taxes for a corporation are a really big thing. Okay, so I will save the spreadsheet and upload it, because I know you're going to ask. Today is March the 8th. So I trust by now that everybody has picked their project and that you are deep in your analysis. Time is going to catch up on you.
So you can put back the date a couple of days?
Huh?
You can put it, yes, man, like Friday or something.
When is it due?
Tomorrow.
It's due tomorrow.
You can put it back till Friday maybe?
It can happen till Friday. Saturday, how we know that not my Sabbath.
It's my Sabbath.
Friday midnight. Friday midnight.
So I'm going to do it up, you know.
Okay, okay.
Everybody feel how nobody's saying.
Exactly, yeah. I don't know. Why did you do that?